very important role.
Absolutely. I think we've been joined now by Dr. Jamil Khan, as the former ambassador. Dr. Jamil, can you hear me? Great. Good to have you on the show. So, Dr. Jamil, with reference to where we stand today, particularly, of course, with the PM being in China, and, of course, looking at our relationship with China in the past and, of course, in the current times, what sort of evolving dynamics do you foresee, particularly when we talk about the CPEC project? And we'll, of course, share in further detail the kind of challenges that could possibly arise in the phase 2 of this project as well, and how we have learned from previous incidents or previous circumstances and have evolved since then. But I want to take first on the larger economic dynamic as well, in which, of course, CPEC plays a big part, but in terms of how we want to engage with the Chinese government and with the Chinese business community as well, especially when we talk about direct engagement with the Chinese businessmen and, of course, more B2B interactions.
Well, for our better understanding, in fact, if we just try and say, evaluate what is the geopolitical situation in the region and around the globe these days, right? And then in that case, we'll probably be in a position to draw some distinction whether this very visit of the Prime Minister, is it like the previous visits, or does it have a better significance and more significance? Now, if we have into consideration the geopolitical dynamics, the containment of China, the Gaza, Ukraine, other problems which are going on. So from that standpoint, and of course the China and Chinese and Russian cooperation both in the space weaponization as well as in trade, economics, military exercises, military collaboration, cooperation, pacts. So all these factors, the indicators, if we have in our mind, then probably we'll reach to some conclusion. Most of the analysts would probably feel, and including myself, that this very visit is probably the most important visit of all the previous visits. And why it's so? Because China, from geo-economic profile, it is now transiting, and almost it has reached to a level where it can say itself that now they are working more on geopolitical approach to take China to a further height and to take the China to a further level of trajectory in the world. So once that happens, probably then only we'll understand the significance, enhanced significance of CPEC. Of course, when CPEC was designed and CPEC or BRI was introduced by President Xi Jinping, even at that time, he had a vision, and that vision is now translated into real practical results of it, and more than 42, and some people say that even 160 countries are somehow the other linked and linked up. They have signed some MOUs and agreements with China, and that is the best example of how the economic diplomacy has worked and how the soft diplomacy has worked in the world, and the collaboration, the importance, the significance of China increased in the eyes of the world. And that's why so many authors, so many analysts, so many thinkers, they give figures that the receding economy of the United States is tilting towards in the favor of China. And why it's in the favor of China? China is number one manufacturing country since 2010. And China is number one trading country since 2013. And China is $18.5 trillion economy. China has given billions of dollars of loan to the United States. China has a surplus trade. The United States was compelled just 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, that they had to impose 100% duty on their electric cars. But it doesn't work, because then it would have so much a harmful effect on the United States. So I can go on and go on how China has now attained its significance and supremacy in many respects on the geoeconomics front. Now, is it the fact that United States is still number one so far as the military power is concerned, and still United States or any other country who has the supremacy of its military, it would try and utilize that supremacy to translate it into the economic benefit or the economic the advantage of that country. Now, once it's receding, the competition gets higher and higher. And that's why you might have noticed today that both leaders today, it reviewed full spectrum of strategic cooperation of partnership. They defined new features of the relationship. And then CPEC, they said that we'll focus more on, and we will focus on the high quality of the CPEC, including the economic, special economic zone and agriculture, industry, other features. And they signed MOU, previous MOU 32, and today they signed about 23 MOU. And in that infrastructure, industries, media, health, socio-economic development, but more importantly, as the other panelist, our permanent panelist, Patafi, was discussing the security feature of it. But one thing, probably so many of us have noticed that in that, both leaders, they said that we will not be deterred by the deflectors of the CPEC. And there's a very clear indication, we've been discussing it, many programs, that how our enemies are, or how the detractors of CPEC want to take an advantage that either it should be slowed down or somehow it should be shelved. But I don't think they would succeed in it. And it's therefore the security aspects take the prime feature. And because of the external interference and because of the interest of the external forces, transnational forces, it becomes more significant that Pakistan has to confront some of the security. But one thing, China understands it quite well, perhaps better than us, that why the security issues in Pakistan, and particularly against the Chinese national. Northern national is as vulnerable today as if we view it from the standpoint of all the previous incidents of the terrorism and where they lost their life, our Chinese friends. So we can understand why they are being targeted. Their projects and their individuals. The detectors and the deflectors, they are trying to, again scare the Chinese nationals also, that they should think twice. Now comes another point. The Prime Minister is now going for B2B. And B2B is going very successful, and I've seen him personally while I was the ambassador there in UAE, and he was the chief minister. I saw with what vibrance and what vitality he would bring a huge number of the businessmen and have the conferences and meetings and the single country exhibition in UAE. So if I have that model in my mind, I can see in even the one of the leaders from China, the Chinese the Exim Bank, he said that he's a Pakistani speed. Pakistan speed is the title given to the Prime Minister this time. So if we try and just combine all these factors, Gwadar importance, it has been highlighted during this meeting. And the water importance.
I will actually come back to you with.
But despite that, I'm sure that SIFC is so structured that it can work with all the tiers of government and ensure that if some hiccup is there, it can be taken care of.
All right. Ambassador Saab, I want your perspective on this as well. You can add to the discussion in terms of the roles that SIFC and other bodies will be able to play moving forward, especially in a way that we're going to ensure a smooth execution of the projects. But I want your take also in terms of the larger relationship that we'll have to balance with our relationships with other countries as well. And that, of course, includes the United States too. And while, of course, we talk about diplomacy and the importance of our allies and the ties that we have with each of them, how big of a challenge do you think this will be for Pakistan to be able to maintain that balance, and what would be expected in terms of the international community or our relationship with different countries when we take this discussion forward with trade and investment with China?
Now, so far we've been able to manage the equilibrium between the Chinese and the competitors of Chinese, which is US and its allies. So far we've been able to somehow steer through it. But obviously it will start getting harder and harder, but the competition also starts into going to a different zone and a higher zone. And why I'm saying this competition, that countries, so many countries, and it is without an economic advantage, without gaining an economic strength, no country can have its natural byproduct, which is a geopolitical thing. See, China has introduced the Asian Infrastructure Development, Infrastructure Investment Bank, and with $200 billion to start with it and more. So why China, US and its allies obviously would feel that the competition is becoming higher, because the World Bank does the same job. And then Chinese, just last week, the president of China, while he was having Arab State Cooperation meeting, which is the 8th or probably 7th meeting, and Arab state leaders, the Gulf leaders in particular, and he asked them that, okay, we can call a peace conference for Gaza, right? We have witnessed last couple of years that the Chinese acceptance in this entire region, not only because of the BRI, not only, yes, of course, it started with the economic linkage and the soft the relations with all these countries, but then it has given them a natural byproduct. Let me come back to your point, what you were saying, SIFC and also equilibrium. So as I said, that equilibrium would gradually become harder, and we have to really focus more, and we have to concentrate our all energies on our diplomatic front with the political leadership, the way they seem to be active in this particular aspect. So yes, it would be harder, but it would not be difficult, because the United States and its allies would try to use all possible means to subvert, or, well, I shouldn't use the word subvert, to at least bring some hurdle on this BRI success. And CPEC is the flagship segment of the BRI, and we understand why it's flagship. If it was not a flagship, then we wouldn't have had the Chinese string of pearls. And if it was not a flagship project, the Americans would not have had a string of lines with the Philippines, with India, with Australia, with Japan, and with all these countries. If that was the case, the US and its allies, United States and UK, would not have gone into a defense agreement in these waters, which leads to the South China Sea. So these are some of those indicators which gives us a sense that probably the competition would become very higher, and that is the reason the China, Russians, they are collaborating even on the military side. The Prime Minister's own wordings before he left for China is that China is number 2 military power in the world. And if you combine the military power of Russians and Chinese, they almost are getting very close to it. And Chinese last couple of years, and particularly last one decade, they are every year gradually enhancing their military might and enhancing their budget. So I'll leave that here. This visit, and that's the why we are hopeful this time. The economic zone, which Bolan has really attained its completion of about 30 or 40%. The Abeji has attained its without, now this thrust of this very high power engagement with the Chinese, with our delegation, with our Prime Minister, with our government, and as you just listened to our panelist Faisal, the Chief of Army Staff is also there, and his presence is a demonstration that any bottleneck in the implication or in the implementation of the project can be removed, and that is through the SIFC. That was very much needed, and right from the very beginning, once it was introduced, I give the example that once I was in UAE, the rulers there would say that, Master, in your country, once we go there, there are more than 24 departments, and our people, they just keep from one department to another, running one department to another department, and then they really lose their hopes. And see what is happening in UAE. I'm talking about my time, that it's one window system, and anyone can come and start their business. So with SIFC, we have been not very fortunate to upgrade our rules, procedures, and systems, business-friendly systems. In fact, we've been dealing, we've been trying to meet the challenges of 21st century with the tools of 19th century. I'm talking about the rules of business. I'm talking about the rules, regulations of movement of files. Still, we have that big, the big thread tied up with the files. Hardly in even the African countries where I've served, I haven't seen, it's the file system is gone 19th century. So SIFC is now one platform which is giving a lot of confidence to the Chinese, and this is what the pledge which our high-level delegation is making, headed by the Prime Minister, that we will iron out any difficulty with. Chinese Consul General, Chinese Ambassador himself has shared all these difficulties with me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Ambassador Saab, I'd like your perspective also on what we're going to be discussing in our next segment, and that's, of course, what Pakistan has achieved as the non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. And this, of course, isn't the first time, but it is a huge margin by which we actually won. And so a lot of countries supported Pakistan's election. And so I want your understanding first in terms of the importance of this seat to begin with, and the way that Pakistan has previously fared as part of the UN Security Council, and what exactly can potentially be the role that the country will be able to play, considering the kind of challenges that we face in the international community, including, of course, the different conflict zones, including, of course, the issue of the self-determination of the people of Kashmir, of course, the issue of the genocide going on against the Palestinians, and, of course, much more around the world.
And I'll give you some indicators, but let me first compliment our diplomats who were involved in it. And in 2012, once we were we were elected as the rotational member of the Security Council, and they were about 2-3 votes short, falling short of it. And I was quite instrumental in just bringing those 2-3 countries where I had stayed. So that I can throw light on it. Why I just mentioned it, that how it works, that the diplomat starts working about 1-2 years in advance, and they start contacting various countries, their foreign offices, and they start taking their pledge that, okay, Pakistan would be contesting this very election in 2024-25. So we would like to have your support. And then those countries would say, okay, if we support you in this, if we vote for you in this, then there are other multilateral forum, and they would say, okay, then we are going to contest in this. Hope that you will give us a pledge. So these are sometimes, most of the times, written pledges, and then for that the diplomats have to really work very, very hard. And it's for this reason that Pakistan is, although it's 8th time, and this is a regional allocation of seats, rotational seats, but still there are so many competitors. And in fact, it's quite interesting that the India, we in this region, once it comes to the rotational seat, we do in a way support India, and India do support in a way Pakistan so far as this particular selection is concerned. So 15 members of the Security Council, and this in last 75 years is the 8th time, and out of 193 members of United Nations, and 190 members participated in it. 5 were 2 were not eligible, 3 did not vote for it, but this is a very significant 182 votes out of 185 who participated in it. So it's more than two-thirds majority. You needed only 124. It's 58 extra votes we got, and that is a demonstration of a good work done by our people all around the world who have been taking pledges last 1.5 to 2 years for this particular election. Significance of Security Council, your question, the second part of your question. Significance of Security Council, definitely at a multilateral forum, you become more important player, because whenever there is anything discussed other than veto issues, you have your vote. And then there are so many things which are not highlighted around the world, and you can always bring it in a resolution of Security Council. So various countries, region-wise, they become a decision-making, they become part of the decision-making process of the global issues while you are a member of the Security Council. And then it is, it promotes the democratic principles around the globe and in the global community. It strikes the balance in power of the members and prevent, sometimes there are certain agendas which once it's debated or once it goes into subcommittee, you have your vote and you have your perspective. Like you asked me about Kashmir. Now, we have been having a very clear instance about Kashmir, and we've been having a very clear instance about Gaza. You will see that out of these 15 members, Pakistan being one, you will see that what the outcomes emerge during the next session once we take over.
I actually have no doubt in the role that Pakistani diplomats will be playing on that front, and of course on this platform as well. But what I do have doubts about is the entire framework of the Security Council in itself, and the value or the impact that it can actually create in the world, because there is of course the aspect of veto that of course influences very, very important decisions around the world and the fate of so many people. So when we talk about the UN Security Council in itself, is that even a platform that is credible to that extent, that can actually achieve something?
We have to understand that this is purely a political platform. Did you ask me this question, or
yes,
you asked this question to? Okay, so we have to understand that this is purely a political platform, and it's world politics are played here. So the interest, you have seen Gaza, how many resolutions have been passed. You have seen Kashmir, how many resolutions have been passed and how many resolutions have been implemented. I will draw the attention of your viewers and yourself of the resolution December 27th, 2023 regarding Gaza. And they clearly instructed Israel to give a pause to the war, but Israel didn't accept it. Israel didn't accept the following resolutions also. Why didn't accept? Because those resolutions were not passed under the provision of Chapter 6 of the United Nations Charter. And if it was passed under the provision of the United Nations Chapter 6,
can you enlighten us?
Which is basically imposing sanction on any member state which doesn't really comply with the resolution. Then the sanction is
but what about the UN Security Council resolutions on Kashmir and the fact that India did not comply with them?
Yeah, that's right, because that was never passed under Chapter 6 of the United Nations Charter. If it is passed under Chapter 6 of the United Nations Charter, the sanction would become a natural part of it, because in Chapter 6, basically it's a sanction which is imposed for non-compliance of the Security Council resolution. And F, like in East Timor and like in Kosovo and like other places, if Chapter 6 resolution is not complied with through the sanction, then they can go for Chapter 7. And Chapter 7 means the air, naval, and the ground forces can be launched, and the blockade can be done against those countries. And that's what they have done it in past, but very rarely. But there comes one point, and that is the veto. And if any resolution is vetoed, and in this case, Israel, you saw, once the question of membership of Palestine came into Security Council, it was vetoed. And if basically, even at the committee level, it is vetoed once there is anything in against the interest of Israel, because the interest of Israel is protected by United States, and the United States is veto power and its allies. So that is the difference, and then
the secretary.
Ambassador Saab, I'm glad that we are talking about this accomplishment, and it is quite an accomplishment. But I wanted you to actually take a step back and look at the UN system itself. And given that it is still functioning within the parameters of something that might be almost gone, and that is Westphalian system. I mean, nation states are important players, but we have seen that there are many entities which might not be nation states, but they are also important. Is there a possibility that this Westphalian straitjacket will be removed from the UN, or some other body might be created?
I think we are heading towards that side. Ultimately, either there's some other bodies to be created, or the effort for the last about almost 11, 12 years, expansion of the Security Council and more veto powers. So, if there are about 60 countries, they have collaborated as united for consensus. That is the title given to the 60 to 70 countries, and they are striving to expand they are striving hard to expand the Security Council membership and the veto powers of the membership. So, in that case, there will be more balancing actions.
Right. Thank you very much.